And she and I got into this banter. Did not, did not, did. And they thought it was funny. And we started doing this back and forth, the Bickersons.
The chemistry was undeniable. When James Garner passed away at age 86, the truth about his relationship with Mariette Hartley finally came to light. For years, millions of Americans watched them bicker and banter in those iconic Polaroid commercials, completely convinced they were husband and wife. The rumors persisted for decades, but what really happened behind the scenes was far more complex than anyone imagined. It started in 1977, when Polaroid took a gamble pairing two actors who had never worked together. James Garner was already famous from Maverick and the Rockford Files. Mariette Hartley was talented but not yet a household name. Nobody predicted what would happen next. The first commercial aired, and something magical happened. The way Garner and Hartley played off each other felt completely genuine. They bickered like a real married couple, finished each other's sentences, and displayed the comfortable familiarity that only comes from years together. Viewers immediately assumed they were watching an actual husband and wife, not two professionals reading scripts. Polaroid struck gold. The commercials were so successful, they kept bringing them back. One commercial became 10, then 50, eventually surpassing 250 commercials spanning nearly a decade. Each one reinforced the illusion. Polaroid sold over 1 million one-step cameras, largely thanks to the trust and warmth radiating from these advertisements. The public's confusion reached absurd levels. Letters poured into Polaroid asking about the couple's children. Magazines speculated about their marriage. People stopped Garner on the street asking how long he and his wife had been together. The situation became so overwhelming that Mariette Hartley had a T-shirt made reading, "I am not Mr. James Garner's wife." She wore it everywhere, desperately trying to set the record straight. Garner found it amusing, but understood why audiences were fooled. Working with Hartley felt effortless. There was no awkwardness, no forced chemistry. They simply clicked from day one. The director barely gave them notes because their natural rhythm was already perfect. What made the commercials work wasn't clever writing or expensive production. It was two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. The advertising world had never seen anything like it. Competitors tried replicating the formula, pairing their own actors to create that same warmth. None succeeded. The Garner-Hartley magic remained unique, and advertising executives still study those Polaroid commercials as the gold standard for authentic partnerships. But behind the smiles and playful banter, there was a deeper story unfolding. The truth about their relationship was far more interesting than any rumor. The reality was both simpler and more touching than rumors suggested. James Garner wasn't married to Mariette Hartley. He was married to Lois Clark, and their love story was one of Hollywood's most enduring romances. Garner met Lois at a party in 1956 and proposed just 14 days later. In an industry where marriages lasted about as long as a film's theatrical run, Garner and Lois stayed together for 58 years until his death. So where did that leave Hartley? The answer reveals something beautiful about Garner's character. When Polaroid first approached them, Hartley was offered significantly less money than Garner. The executives assumed she should feel grateful just to appear alongside a major star. Garner refused that arrangement. He told Polaroid that if they wanted him, they needed to pay Hartley properly and give her a real contract with fair terms. He wouldn't move forward otherwise. Garner had watched too many actresses get exploited by the industry. He demanded that Hartley receive equal billing, equal screen time, and equal respect. The executives resisted, but Garner held firm. Eventually they gave in, and the commercials proceeded. What developed between them was genuine friendship built on mutual respect. They never dated. There was no secret romance. But there was something deeper, a professional partnership where both parties looked out for each other. Hartley later said working with Garner felt safe in a way few other jobs in Hollywood did. He never tried to steal scenes and actively worked to make her look good. Garner spoke about Hartley with consistent warmth throughout his life. But more than admiring her professionalism, he recognized something most people missed: Behind her bright smile, Hartley was carrying pain she worked hard to conceal. Garner understood this because he was doing the same thing. Both had learned to perform happiness even when darkness lurked underneath. Their friendship extended beyond commercial sets. When Hartley went through difficult times, Garner checked in on her like a protective older brother. Lois Clark never felt threatened by Hartley. She understood her husband was simply being decent, and the three occasionally socialized together. The public never fully accepted the truth. Even after countless interviews explaining they were just friends, people wanted to believe the fairy tale. But Garner didn't care what tabloids printed. He had his real marriage with Lois and a valued friendship with Mariette. What he didn't broadcast publicly was just how much he understood about the demons Hartley was fighting. James Garner's easy smile and laid-back charm made him seem like the luckiest man in Hollywood. But that image was carefully constructed, hiding a lifetime of pain. When Garner was just 5 years old, his mother died. His father remarried a woman who would make young James's life a living nightmare. His stepmother beat the children regularly and withheld food as punishment. She created an atmosphere of fear and violence in what should have been a safe home. Garner described his childhood as something he survived rather than lived through. He joined the Merchant Marines at 16, lying about his age to escape. Later, he served in the Korean War, earning 2 Purple Hearts after being wounded twice in combat. Hollywood brought fame, but also tremendous physical demands. The Rockford Files required Garner to perform many of his own stunts, and his body paid the price. He underwent multiple knee surgeries from injuries sustained during action sequences. His back troubled him constantly. The arthritis was agonizing, turning simple movements into exercises in pain management. In 2000, Garner needed quintuple bypass surgery after doctors discovered severe blockages in his heart. Then, in 2008, he suffered a stroke. Each health crisis reminded him that his body was breaking down faster than his spirit was ready to accept. The physical pain was relentless, but Garner dealt with something even harder: depression. He was remarkably open about his mental health struggles during an era when most male actors would rather have admitted to almost anything else. Depression had shadowed him throughout his adult life. Some days, the weight made even simple tasks feel impossible. He had a loving wife, successful career, and financial security. Depression didn't care about any of that. What made it particularly difficult was the constant need to perform happiness. His career depended on projecting charm and ease. Audiences wanted the cool, funny, confident character Garner had perfected. So he learned to compartmentalize. He could be suffering inside while delivering comedy gold on camera. The smile was genuine in the moment, even if darkness waited once the director yelled cut. On set, almost nobody knew what Garner endured daily. He showed up on time, knew his lines, and did the work. If his knee was screaming or his back was spasming, he didn't mention it. He came from a generation that valued toughness above wellness. What few people understood was that Garner's kindness toward others grew directly from his own suffering. He knew what it felt like to smile while drowning. He recognized the signs when someone else was doing the same thing. And that recognition would prove crucial because Hartley was hiding secrets that made his struggles look simple by comparison. The Polaroid commercials made people think Garner and Hartley were married, but it was a single episode of the Rockford Files that turned speculation into scandal. In 1979, Hartley appeared as a guest star on Garner's detective series. The episode was supposed to be just another job. Instead, it became a tabloid firestorm. The script called for a romantic subplot between Hartley's character and Jim Rockford. The writers knew Garner and Hartley's chemistry from the commercials would make their scenes feel natural. The episode featured a kiss scene, and when they filmed it, the sparks were undeniable. The Rockford Files filmed on location around Los Angeles, often in public spaces. Paparazzi had learned Garner's filming schedule and frequently lurked nearby. On the day they filmed the kiss scene, a photographer with a telephoto lens was positioned at a distance. He captured Garner and Hartley locked in an embrace that looked intensely passionate. The photographer sold the images immediately. Within days, they appeared in tabloids, with headlines suggesting Garner was cheating on his wife with his commercial co-star. The photos looked damning because they lacked context. Readers couldn't see the cameras or crew. They just saw two people who everyone already suspected were together, now caught kissing in what appeared to be a private moment. TV Guide ran an article with the headline, "That woman is not James Garner's wife." The piece explained they were co-workers and friends, detailing Garner's long marriage to Lois Clark and emphasizing the kiss was scripted and professional. But the article made things worse. By addressing the rumors so prominently, the magazine gave them more oxygen. Readers who hadn't heard the speculation now learned about it. The attempted clarification backfired, turning a manageable rumor into full-blown controversy. Garner was furious, but not at Hartley. He was angry at the tabloid industry that invaded his privacy and twisted innocent moments into salacious stories. Most of all, he worried about Lois. His wife knew the truth, but having magazines suggest her husband was unfaithful was still hurtful. Hartley felt terrible. She had tremendous respect for Garner's marriage. The idea that people thought she was a homewrecker was mortifying. She gave interviews explaining that actors kiss on screen all the time, without it meaning anything. But logic didn't sell magazines the way Scandal did. The episode itself was excellent television. Hartley delivered a nuanced performance, and critics praised it. But all anyone wanted to talk about was whether the two stars were having an affair. What the tabloids never investigated was why their on-screen connection felt so authentic. It wasn't romance. It was a shared understanding between two people who were both expert at hiding their pain behind professional smiles. And that recognition was about to become even more important because Hartley was carrying secrets that were slowly destroying her from the inside. Mariette Hartley's bright smile and bubbly personality made her perfect for commercials. Audiences loved her warmth and relatability. But behind that cheerful exterior was a woman grappling with darkness that stretched back generations. Her family tree was marked by tragedy and pain in ways that would have destroyed someone with less resilience. John Broadus Watson was Mariette's maternal grandfather, and he was famous in psychology circles as the founder of behaviorism. His theories dominated American parenting for decades, built on a chilling premise. Children should never be coddled, never hugged, never shown physical affection. Watson believed that touching children or displaying emotional warmth would create weak, dependent adults. He advocated for cold, clinical child-rearing, where parents treated their offspring like scientific experiments rather than human beings needing love. Watson's own children suffered under his methods, and his daughter, Mariette's mother, grew up emotionally damaged and starved for affection she never received. That trauma passed down to Mariette, who grew up in a household where emotional coldness was the norm. The legacy of her grandfather's theories created a family plagued by depression and inability to connect. The darkness in Mariette's family went beyond emotional distance. Her father struggled with severe depression throughout his life. When Mariette was a teenager, she was in the next room when he ended his life. The trauma of that moment, being so close yet unable to prevent it, left scars that never fully healed. She blamed herself for years, wondering if she could have done something, said something, been something different that would have changed the outcome. Hartley's first marriage was a nightmare she rarely discussed publicly. Her husband was abusive, but he was careful about it. He knew how to hurt her in ways that left no visible marks. Physical bruises heal, but the psychological damage from someone who claims to love you while systematically destroying your self-worth goes much deeper. She stayed far longer than she should have, trapped by the same patterns of seeking approval and love that her grandfather's theories had embedded in her family for generations. The pain became unbearable. Hartley turned to alcohol to numb the constant ache of existing. She drank to forget, to sleep, to get through another day of pretending everything was fine. The drinking made everything worse, but in the moment, it was the only relief she could find. At her lowest point, Hartley contemplated ending her own life, following the same tragic path her father had taken. She understood, finally, what had driven him to that desperate act. But Hartley survived. She got sober, left her abusive marriage, and began the long process of healing. She wrote a memoir called Breaking the Silence, where she detailed her family's struggles with depression and her own battles with thoughts of self-harm and alcohol. The book was brutally honest, stripping away the cheerful facade she'd maintained for years and revealing the pain underneath. What made Hartley's public persona so convincing was that she genuinely could experience joy and humor. She just had to work much harder for it than most people realized. The laughter in those Polaroid commercials was real, but it existed alongside tremendous pain. She had learned, like Garner, to compartmentalize, to be professional, to give audiences what they wanted while keeping her darkest struggles hidden. When Garner looked at Hartley across those commercial sets, he saw more than her performance. He recognized a fellow survivor, and that recognition created a bond that went deeper than friendship or professional respect. It was the connection between two people who understood what it meant to carry unbearable weight while smiling for the cameras. James Garner wasn't a psychologist, and he never claimed to be some kind of emotional expert, but he had spent decades navigating his own pain, and that gave him a radar for recognizing when someone else was doing the same thing. From the very first day working with Mariette Hartley, he sensed something beneath her cheerful exterior. The way she threw herself into work a little too enthusiastically. The brief moments when her smile dropped between takes and something darker flickered across her face. The careful way she maintained boundaries while still being warm and professional. Garner never pried. He understood that some things people needed to keep private, and that forcing someone to talk about their pain before they were ready only made things worse. Instead, he simply made it clear through his actions that he was safe. When other crew members made thoughtless jokes, he redirected the conversation. When directors pushed too hard or expected too much, he advocated for breaks and reasonable schedules. He created space for Hartley to breathe. During one particularly difficult period in Hartley's life, when her personal struggles were threatening to overwhelm her completely, Garner noticed she was barely holding it together. She still showed up on time and delivered her lines perfectly, but something fundamental had shifted. He didn't ask what was wrong. Instead, he told her a story about his own battles with depression, how some days getting out of bed felt impossible, how the world could look gray and lifeless, even when objectively everything was fine, how he'd learned that surviving those days was its own form of courage. That conversation changed something between them. Hartley realized Garner wasn't just being generically kind, he actually understood. He'd been in the darkness too, knowing she wasn't alone, that someone she respected had fought similar battles and survived, gave her strength when she needed it most. Garner never told her what to do or offered simplistic solutions. He just let her know that he saw her struggling and that he believed she could make it through. What made their working relationship so powerful was this mutual recognition of shared pain. When they bantered in those Polaroid commercials, there was an undercurrent of real affection born from genuine understanding. They weren't just acting, they were two wounded people finding moments of lightness together. That authenticity was what audiences responded to, even if they couldn't articulate exactly why the chemistry felt so real. Garner also used his influence in practical ways. When Hartley needed work during tough financial periods, he recommended her for roles. When producers questioned whether she was reliable, he vouched for her professionalism. When she faced discrimination or unfair treatment, he made calls and applied pressure behind the scenes. He never made a big deal about any of this, never expected gratitude or recognition. He just did it because that's what friends do, especially friends who understand what it's like to fight invisible battles every single day. Hartley later said that Garner's quiet support during her darkest years possibly saved her life. Not through any dramatic intervention, but simply by being consistently present and treating her with dignity when she could barely treat herself that way. He never judged her struggles or implied she should just be stronger or more positive. He accepted that pain was part of life and that surviving it was enough. The bond between them was built on this foundation of mutual respect and shared understanding. They both knew what it meant to smile through agony. They both knew the exhaustion of maintaining a public persona while falling apart privately. And they both knew the value of having someone who understands without requiring explanations. That connection, forged in darkness but expressed through light, was the real story behind those commercials that convinced America they were married. In his final years, Garner spoke openly about what Mariette Hartley meant to him. She wasn't a romantic interest or a secret love. She was a friend who understood the weight he carried, someone who knew what it meant to fight invisible battles while the world expected constant smiles. He told interviewers that working with Hartley had been one of the great joys of his career, not because of fame or money, but because of the genuine connection they shared. When Garner passed away in July 2014 at age 86, Hartley was devastated. She released a statement calling him one of the kindest, most generous people she'd ever known. She talked about how he'd believed in her when she struggled to believe in herself, how he'd shown her that surviving pain with dignity was its own form of strength. Hartley continued her advocacy work with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, turning her family's tragedy into purpose. She spoke publicly about depression, trying to break the silence that had destroyed previous generations of her family. In many ways, Garner's example had shown her how to use pain as fuel for compassion rather than letting it consume her. The Polaroid commercials remain iconic, not because of clever marketing, but because two broken people found genuine moments of joy together. Their story reveals something profound about human connection, that sometimes the deepest friendships form between people who recognize each other's hidden wounds. Audiences sensed that authenticity even without knowing its source. The world thought they were married. The truth was more meaningful. They were two survivors who understood that making it through another day, with grace and humor intact, was victory enough. That understanding, forged in darkness but expressed through laughter, created magic that still resonates decades later.